I'm not a nostalgic kind of guy. I'm just not. I never have been. I don't sit around, talk about the good old days. A lot of guys my age do. I mean, that's like half their waking hours. Talking about the good old days. Or complaining, in tandem with talking about the good old days, complaining about how things are now. Guys my age. Late 60s, 70s. It's the same conversation every single time. It's unbelievably tiresome to me. But they luxuriate in it, they wallow in it. Everything was better. Everything. The girls were prettier. The music meant something. The cars were better. Everything. And just as an aside, these guys, they're easy targets. So easy. Sitting ducks. For anyone that comes along and promises them that they can return to, quote, the good old days. They say, sign me up. That's what I want. The good old days. Yeah, well, whatever. That's not what this video is about. I do remember the past, but I remember, I remember little things, not important things like, the big overall categories of cars and music and girls and how the beer was colder. I don't know how that happened, but the beer was colder then, better. So yeah, I don't think about, I don't remember those overarching categories. I just remember little things. And they're not like wonderful things. They're just things that, happened or existed all the time when I was a kid. Because, like I said, I'm old. I'm like the ancient mariner here. I'm 68, so I was born in 1957. So yeah, I'm old. And I just remember weird little things about everyday life. I don't know, maybe you do too, or maybe it's just me. I don't know. But I just remember things like, like when I was a little kid, a small, 3, 4, 5. So 5 years old, I would have been, 1962, right? And I just remember men, if we were at a table and a woman came in the room, we weren't royalty, we were just middle class. A woman came in the room or exited, got up from the table and exited, all the men would stand up. They would stand up until she passed out into the other room, or was seated in the room you were in. And this in fact was drilled into me when I was a small boy. This is just what you did, it went along with opening car doors or doors in general for women, always walking on the street edge of the sidewalk if you're with a woman or a girl. This is just something you did, and then it just sort of went away very quickly in the like mid 60s, 65. No one did it anymore after that. At least not, in the circles my family was in. So I remember things like that. I remember men, everyone smoked. Everyone smoked. All the women, all the men, everyone smoked. All the teenagers, when I was a little kid, smoked. They smoked on the sly if their parents didn't allow them. And some of their parents did allow them to smoke. They allowed them to smoke when they were 14 or 15. And so everyone smoked, but a lot of men smoked a pipe. Like all the time, they smoked a pipe. They had a pipe with them, and they had, pipe tobacco in a pouch, and they smoked a pipe. And of course, there were cigars, and as I said before, cigarettes. But lots of men smoked a pipe. And I don't know, I wasn't a man, I was just a little boy. But I think, from what I know and what I absorbed, I think that they believed it made them more urbane, cosmopolitan, sophisticated, etc. And again, by the end of the 60s, that was like gone, just poof, gone. You just didn't see guys smoking pipes too much by the end of the 60s. I remember the sound. I remember going to sleep. I remember going to sleep with the sound of my mother typing on a typewriter. She had a small Olivetti. I remember going to sleep with the sound of that typewriter in my ears. She was working on something. My mother worked, which was unusual, very unusual at that time. She worked probably from the time I was, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10. She worked and she was good at what she did. She did computer programming, and she went up quickly in the company she was at. And I don't know if she was typing memos or whatever, but yeah, I remember that sound. And also I remember my mother having other women over, and they were playing bridge. I don't know how orthodox the scorekeeping was. What they were doing mostly is talk, and smoking cigarettes, and tremendous amounts of coffee. 4 or 5 women around our kitchen table, just talking about, Christ, everything, I guess. I don't know, we would skedaddle out of there because, nothing's so boring to a little boy than hearing women talk to each other. And I'm not saying that as a sexist remark. It's just it contains no value for those boys, Hearing men talk was a little bit better, but not much. What you wanted to do was, go lie down in the living room in front of the General Electric black and white television and watch Tom and Jerry. That's what you wanted to do, right? So, I remember crazy, stupid little stuff like that. I remember, the car always needed some sort of adjustment somehow, the carburetors or the point, whatever, you know. And my father always had the hood up. Not just him, all people, you know, all the fathers in the neighborhood would work on the car. And it was always needing something. It wasn't like cars now. I remember you had to have, you know, when I was a very small child, there were still a lot of 6-volt batteries in cars. And so you had to have a separate 6-volt jumper cable and 6-volt charger box, because, you know, you couldn't use the 12-volt or it might, you know, blow up the battery or catch it on fire or whatever. So, you know, I remember things like that. You know, I remember that men on the phone, well, not just on the phone, but definitely on the phone, sometimes in person, they wouldn't even, a lot of men wouldn't end a conversation by just saying goodbye. They would just end it. It's done. They would just say thanks, and, you know, that's it, hang up or walk away or whatever, you know. I don't know why that was. And again, it just sort of disappeared by, you know, the late 60s and early 70s. You know, men would then say, they would end a phone call, whatever they said, and then say goodbye. But before that, they would just say, got it, you know, and hang up, you know, click. So those are kind of the you know, the weird little things I remember. And I don't miss these things. I don't, you know, I don't, I don't think, oh my gosh, that was so much better back in the day. I don't miss these things, but I do remember how different it was, you know? Like when you turned on the radio, it would click. And of course, in the early 60s, you still had tube radios. It would click and then warm up. And then, you know, you'd have all this static until you found the perfect spot, you know, for the channel. And of course, AM was king. There was no FM, just AM. So you could get an AM, as some of you may know, AM waves, radio waves, they travel a lot longer than FM radio waves. So if you were in Denton, Texas, some nights you could pull in LA. And if you were in Baltimore, Maryland, you could easily get the New York stations late at night. So, and if you were in Memphis, you could get New Orleans, no problem at all. No problem. So you had these massive AM stations with these massive transmitting antennas, and they had a very wide coverage area. And so you could just kind of, you know, cruise around the dial and check out things elsewhere in your region or even outside the region. And then, of course, you know, in the late 60s, all the radios, by that time, the new radios had switched over to transistors, you know. So, yeah, I remember a lot of little stuff like that, you know. I remember, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just a lot different than now. And it's so different sometimes that sometimes I feel like it wasn't even real. It was, but it seems so far away, both in time and relevance. It seems so far away that, yeah, sometimes I just feel like it's, you know, just make-believe. But it wasn't make-believe. I lived it. I was there. I was a kid. And like I said, it's not good or bad. I don't rhapsodize about how wonderful things were in the past. That's not me. I don't do that. I'm not like I said, I'm not a guy who just loves nostalgia. I prefer to look forward. But that doesn't prevent me from remembering the past. And the past, of course, as I said, was my past at my age was so different, so very different in so many ways. The 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 technology, the way people acted, dressed, etc., so different.